Hey, it's Yasmin, and because I received some questions asking how I make my herbal horse cookies or biscuits, I decided to film this little video showing the recipe. Now, when it comes to hair wasting herbs, please remember I'm not a professional. The knowledge about the usage of some herbs I have because drying and using herbs is something like a tradition in my family. This is something that works for me and for my horses. I'm not trying to tell you that you should do the same, especially if you're not sure which herbs will be good for your horse. And please always ask your vet and get some knowledge about the particular plant before you decide to give it to your horse. And listen to your horse. If he doesn't want to eat a certain herb, it's very likely that his body doesn't need it. So, horses are designed to eat herbs, and they digest them much better than humans do, because they can eat basically the whole plant and digest the cellulose, which we cannot. Many of the herbs that I'm using are very common and grow in the horses' pastures. Actually, every type of herb that I will use today comes from my yard. So, when I'm making those horse cookies, I like to ask my horses which herbs they need at the moment. I mean, the cookies, if they are dried properly, can be stored for quite a long time, like half a year or something. But after some time, the horse might lose interest in eating them, simply because he won't need the certain herb anymore. And so I like to make not too much cookies at one time. And today, my horses choose chamomile, nettles, and a little bit of plantain. Now, I like my herbs to be dry because 1. The cookies will need less time in the oven. Second, dry herbs are simply easier to cut, and also the cookies can be stored longer without the risk of mold because there's simply less water in them. But at this moment I have only dried nettles, so the rest I had to take straight from my garden and it's fresh. To the herbs, I will be adding a tiny bit of flour. I have wheat flour, but it could be also oat or barley flour, and some flax seeds. If your horse can tolerate some type of sugar, you can add a tiny bit of higher carb sweeteners, as oat flakes, as fruits like unsweetened applesauce, for example, to make it a little bit tastier. But I prefer to keep it pretty simple. The more that it's spring now and the horses get more than enough sugar from grass, from young tree leaves, and all the greens that grow in their pasture. So I start by cutting the herbs into tiny pieces, and they must be cut really into a fine, almost powdery consistency, because otherwise the cookies will be very brittle and there will be no sense in making them at all. We want something that we can use during, for example, training, right? So the first herb that I have today are stinging nettles. And I've seen my horses eating fresh nettles time to time, but they also get stinged. So I like giving them nettles or in such cookies or as a dry herb, because after about 5 days of drying they lose most of their stings, and then I can give them to the horses. I also like making nettle tea for myself, just because nettles are very nutritious and I like the taste of them. They contain a lot of vitamin C, about 238 milligrams of vitamin C per 100 grams of tissue, and that's pretty high compared to other plants that grow, let's say, in the wild. Nettles contain also a lot of vitamin A. About 30% of the day mass of the leaves is protein. They have also minerals such as iron, calcium, magnesium, so they are great for horses or people with anemia. There was also done a lot of research on how nettles can help people with allergies, diabetes. They decrease certain inflammatory molecules. Also, a research from 2016 shows that injecting a water or alcohol extract from stinging nettles after 8 weeks is able to successfully decrease glucose levels in humans. So, although these researches were done on human health, for me it seems quite obvious that nettles can be beneficial also for other animals, and so for our horses. So these are plantains. So this one are the long and narrow leaf plantains. The other variety is the major plantain, this with the round shaped leaves. Now this ones with the characteristic long linear stripes on the leaves was called by some Native American cultures the life plant because of the many uses. Plantains are high in B vitamins. They are helpful in healing some skin wounds, and that's because the plant is not only antibacterial but also contains a compound called allantoin, which helps to regenerate soft tissue in the body. Plantain, especially the seeds of the plant, contains also a substance which is slippery, similar, for example, to flax seeds, which is calming to irritated conditions both inside and outside the body. And for horses, it also helps with preventing sand colics because it simply glues out the sand in the horse's digestive system. The seeds have also some protein and a lot of fiber in them. So today I will only use the flower and the seed part of both the narrow and the round leaf plantains. Normally I would use the whole plant, but it contains quite a lot of water, which would make the drying time of the cookies much longer. The third herb I will be using today is chamomile. Now, chamomile is quite popular. I mean, probably everybody has chamomile tea somewhere at home, right? Most people know it's mildly sedative, so it has some calming effects also on horses. But actually, it has many other properties. It's good for the digestive system, it's loaded in antioxidants, it has some anti inflammatory and antimicrobial properties, and it's also a mild pain reliever. In the nervous system, chamomile works as a sulfur restorative, and this means that it helps to restore normal function to the nervous system. And that's why I like to offer it to horses that are stressed, horses with anxiety, restlessness, etc. So, when all the herbs are cut, in a separate bowl I prepare a flax egg, and I do it by taking some ground flax and whole flax seeds and adding warm water. Then I mix it and I put it aside, allowing it to gel. In the meantime, I add about a tablespoon of salt and some flour to the herbs. Now, it's quite important to mix everything well. I've done some experiments, and when the dough is mixed unevenly, the cookies will crumble. So, when everything is mixed well, I combine the wet and the dry ingredients. And as you see, it should be quite sticky and formable in the hands. Then I put everything on a piece of baking paper. You can shape it into whatever shape you like. I like the easiest and the lazy option, and I just cut it into small square pieces about half of a centimeter thick. And the last thing we have to do is baking or drying the whole thing. Now, some vitamins like B1 or vitamin C are heat sensitive, so they will be lost during baking the cookies. But on the other hand, heat removes things like oxalates that can inhibit absorption of certain nutrients like calcium, for example, and thereby it improves the bioavailability. But in general, it's better not to use heat. So if you have enough sun or a dehydrator, you can use it. I don't, so I have to use my baking oven and keep it on low heat until the cookies will be dry and crisp. Now, when dried, they should break quite easily, and that's it. Ready to serve them to your horse, or horses in my case. Ale Zenit, chodź, chodźcie konie.